what do we currently know about autism risk factors?
So the biggest one is as far as I've seen, is paternal age. So that's a big one. Maternal age also, I saw a recent study that showed that. So the older the dad is, the bigger the risk. Then the older the mom is, the bigger the risk. But also, interestingly, older dad with very young mom actually had the highest risk for whatever reason. I don't know. That was a big study out of Australia, I think, which was interesting. So that's one big category. Pollution's another big category. So especially living by a freeway, there's been many studies I've seen at this point that showed that if you live very close to a freeway, I saw one that was if you're within 1,000 feet of the freeway, so a couple like football fields away, then you had a 3 times increase of having autism. So that was an interesting correlation. There's correlation between a lot of metals and some of the research. So cadmium, arsenic, mercury, aluminum, of course, the most debated depending on what you see. So because of the fact that there's aluminum in autism, that research is kind of difficult because a lot of research says that it's not related, but then some things say that it is. So, but metals in general are certainly correlated in many studies. So that's one. Pesticides, so glyphosate has been correlated with it, and maternal infection. So there's a few things in when mom's pregnant. So infections, fevers, multiple diabetes, preeclampsia, all these things seem to be related, and then nutrient deficiencies in mom or the child seems to be related. So those are the big categories that I've seen when I've looked through the research, but almost nothing is definitive. There's very little that's like, well, we know this for sure, and anything with autism, it's fought no matter what you say. So, anything that I've said, you can find 10 studies that say it and 10 studies that say that it doesn't. So it's still pretty difficult to know.
Well, what's interesting is that you said most of the research tends to be around the paternal age and maternal age, but to me that's just pointing the finger at the parents, and might potentially be used as a scapegoat, indemnifying these environmental exposures. Where
Agreed.
Obviously there's a lot of money that goes into whether it's the use of heavy metals in various industrial applications, or these herbicides and pesticides that might be causally related. I don't think we know, but it's just interesting that most of the research dollars has gone to basically point a finger at the parents.
Yeah, which to me suggests that there's a lot going on behind the scenes when it comes to autism, which is very interesting, because I think a whole can of worms will open up if anything is even remotely definitively shown to be a significant risk factor for autism. That's going to severely affect any company or any business or any product or any chemical, because as soon as something is the fingers point at it, then everyone's going to kind of turn away from that. And so I think there's a lot of money being spent to avoid discussing whatever is related to your business, because they don't want that kind of PR, because that would be a disaster for them.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this recently with, there's a company called Syngenta based out of China who produces an herbicide called paraquat. And paraquat is illegal for use in China, but it's used here in the United States. And occupational exposure to paraquat is associated with dramatically 3 to 4, somewhere between 2 and 4-fold increased risk for Parkinson's disease. And they've known for decades that this compound is easily able to enter the brain. It's a mitochondrial poison, and there is significant evidence showing that they essentially suppressed that information. There was a great article written, I forget the publication, but Carrie Gillum was the journalist who basically produced this expose showing how they had all this data, they had all this knowledge, they suppressed the information. They in fact assembled a SWAT team of scientists to suppress the information. And that's just like one herbicide associated to one disease outcome. It would be hard to imagine a world where this isn't just happening across the board.
I would guess that you're correct. I think it's happening often. It's not all nefarious, but I think that they, of course, can do the calculations, and they're so big at this point that they can do the plus minus on, all right, we're going to put this out there, we're going to hide it for as long as we can, we're going to keep it under wraps as best as we can, and then we'll get fined and it'll be okay. I mean, we've seen it with opioids, we've seen it with glyphosate, we've seen it with PFAS, we've seen it with many things at this point. So I would imagine that most big companies don't want you to know that their product can cause issues, especially when it's not extremely clear. Like it's like, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. If we don't study it, we don't know. and so they don't study it, so they don't know, or sometimes they know, but I think a lot of the times they just get a whiff of it, and then they kind of make sure that the research never shows that thing.
Yeah, I mean, it might be these compounds might be causal to a certain genetic background. For example, certain herbicides that might be quote unquote safe for a general population seem to increase risk for Alzheimer's disease among ApoE4 carriers. This is really hard science to do, and takes years and the will, the will and the funding to be able to do. And there's just so many exposures today that I would imagine it would be really frustrating for somebody on the front line, such as yourself. Hey, if you liked that video, you need to check out this one here, and I'll see you there.